I know you guys hate my hair and you think it's just very out of style. That's actually what inspired this whole video. And they say the cardinal rule is if you've had similar hair for the last 10 years, then it's very dated and it's time to make a change. However, I will say about 10 years ago, I did have blonde hair, although it wasn't blonde, it was yellow. I've showed you this before. I cannot even believe I let it go that long. So then I did switch it finally to my natural brown, which is way better. I've changed up different ways that I style it, that I curl it. A few years back, I actually did chop quite a few inches off of my hair and I ended up hating it. And then all of you guys commented on how much older I looked. So I've just been looking at a lot of different hairstyles. And so again, that's how this video was born. Let's take a look at some recent hair trends that are actually no longer in style for 2026 and some styles that could actually be making you look older. But again, my hair is not perfect. I'm probably aging myself too. I don't know. I am gonna show you a little later in the video a hairstyle that I feel like so many of you would just love for me to do, but it's pretty drastic. And I guess I do want your opinions. Now, another thing that really got me thinking about all of this was my recent Jane Fonda versus Martha Stewart hair example. I got their ages wrong. So I did want to correct that, but regardless, it still goes to show how much your hairstyle can either age you or drastically make you look younger. So Jane Fonda, she's 88, so she is older than Martha Stewart, but look at her hairstyle. It is very stiff, it's hairsprayed, there's not much movement compared to Martha Stewart, okay? She's 84, she is younger, but she looks way younger than 84 in my opinion. And I think so much of it has to do with her hair. There's movement, there's flow, her hair's not super stiff, and she just looks way younger. So let's talk about stiff hair and why it's not so good for 2026. And I do want to give some examples that are a little more relevant to 2026. If you have longer hair, this is a great example. She's beautiful, okay? She has wonderful hair, but I can tell that she has a lot of product and a lot of hairspray sprayed into those curls, and that just has a tendency to make your hair look sticky and honestly kind of frizzier than it would otherwise. And I can just tell that if she walked down the sidewalk, like her hair wouldn't move that much. And then here's another example of shorter hair, but really tight curls. You can tell she has lots of hairspray in there to keep those curls intact and tight. And that's just not as in style anymore. Another thing to keep in mind is hairstyles where you kind of lay or brush the hair back to the side and then spray it to make it stay in that unnatural position. These are some examples of what I'm talking about. I feel like these hairstyles now, again, they're kind of dated. These videos can be the most interesting to film and I'm sure for you guys to watch, but man, sometimes I feel like a freaking bad person. So again, these are just some tips to consider. But let's proceed. So sometimes when women spray a lot of hairspray into their hair, it's usually for two purposes. One would be to hold the curl more, although like I said, I think right now just looser, more flowy curls are more in. But the other side of a lot of hairspray is usually to add more volume and lift to your hair. But in doing so, I think overly teased, volumized hair, granted, I definitely need more volume in my hair, but these are some examples where I do think the overly volumed hair can make you look older, especially the bump its. If you are still doing, I don't think anyone's still using the bump it. Do you remember the bump it? So that was like a device. It was like a plastic thing. Man, I'm sure they made so much money from that. But you would put it in your hair and it would create like this bump in the back of your hair, like this fake volume thing. I do still see some people teasing the back of their hair a lot to add volume, and I just think that particular specific spot of volume is very dated. But again, here's some examples of shorter, volumized hair that a lot of older women choose to do because they think they're getting older, they don't like their hair, and that's just what they feel like they need to do. But what's interesting is these examples are of very young women, very young models, but that hairstyle alone makes them look way older than they really are. So let's get into the next hair trend that is a definite no for 2026, and that is the severe side part, where you very heavily part your hair to one side, either the left or the right, and then flip it over, all of it over to the other side. This is an example, perfect example. It gives you volume, so there's definitely a pro to it, but it's also extremely dated. But I have to say, I have a bone to pick with the center part, which is definitely more in style for this year. But the thing is, that makes you just have no volume because your hair just lays flat equally on both sides. And so that's why I tend to try to put my hair mostly in the center, but like ever so slightly slightly to one side. It actually just naturally falls this way, but it does give you a tiny bit of lift. And I do need all the help that I can get. Here's another example where it's slightly to one side and it does give a bit more volume than just the center part. Okay, let's talk about color for 2026. So no longer is it so in style to have very icy blonde platinum hair. Okay, that was really in for a while. A lot of people are kind of pulling back from that. First of all, it's extremely damaging. It dulls your hair. It's just like really hard upkeep. So honestly, this is a good thing, but this is kind of what I'm talking about. It also is very, very draining of the color of your skin. Like it's just hard to maintain that and really look good wearing it. So I would say if you are a blonde, I think this is a perfect example of what's way more in for this year. Just like it's a little warmer. It's still really nice, pretty blonde color. It just has a nice, more natural, warm hue. But don't let it get too yellow. Good Lord, it's a fine line. It's like you're there before you know it. This is another example where I do think the hair, it's not as bad as what I had, but it's like leaning a little too yellow. So you do just have to keep up with the purple conditioner or the purple shampoo just to tone it down a little bit. And then here is an example of really warm hair where I think it is leaning a little too orange. Maybe I'm wrong. So we talked about light hair. Let's talk about dark hair. So I think that very flat, one-dimensional brown or even black hair can be extremely aging. Let me show you examples to prove my point though. Meghan Markle. She used to have very black hair, and then about 5 or 6 years ago, she did change it to be more just brown, and she looks so much younger. Like she's older in the photo, but looks way younger because she has more life in her face. The black really just drains the color out of your face sometimes. And the same goes for another Megan Fox. Megan Fox used to have black hair, then she changed it to be more of a brown, and look how much more alive she looks. So that's just something to keep in mind. And what's interesting is right now for 2026, the brown espresso chocolate brown color is so in for clothing. Like that's like what everyone wants to wear. And the same goes for hair. I think that that's the color that everyone is wanting. This specific color right here is like perfection in my opinion. It's the perfect chocolate espresso brown. However, consider doing a glaze every once in a while because I do think that that does add some dimension to your hair. It makes it look more rich. It makes it look more vibrant. The before and after and just using this specific glaze is crazy. And then another hairstyle that has been very normalized, very accepted for the last many years. I'm sure so many people would actually say it's classic. And that is just stick straight hair. It's kind of boring, it's easy, and it's been kind of in for quite a while now, but now I feel like it's kind of out. And here's some examples. This is what I'm talking about, like very just plain straight hair. And then here's some examples where they still have straight hair, but there's a slight bend or a slight wave or like a slight little flip at the end of the hair that just makes it so much better and so much more relevant to this time period. So if you do curl your hair, there are some trends to keep in mind and maybe stay away from. So here's an example of a woman who has a great head of hair, but you'll notice that all of the curls are going in the exact same direction. They all look identical, and that used to be a thing. It's not so much anymore. So I think that you'll get a much better curl effect if you just kind of alternate the barrel going away from you and towards you. And it sounds way more complicated, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but sometimes just having a curl go the opposite direction makes the whole hairstyle lay better. Now, the worst curl trend that you could do. Honestly, this is the worst hair trend of the entire video. It's where women would curl or wave their hair, but then leave the ends super stick straight like this. Like what? Everyone was doing this. Long hair, short hair, everyone was doing this. You probably did it. I'm sorry, I hated it from day one, but it is officially out of style. And it's just a very easy fix. Look at these examples where women just curl their hair all the way down to the bottom. Now let's move on to bangs, because bangs can be a full-blown strategy. They can really make you look younger because they can hide some of your forehead wrinkles and the 11s. However, there can be bad bangs. Specifically, bad blunt bangs can look very aging. I think it's also just outdated. Here's an example of this actress. Like, I think she looks great. I just think the bangs make her look older than she really is. Same with Taylor Swift. I mean, she's still pretty darn young, but I think the bangs actually age her. And then here's some examples of just better bangs. They are more wispy. They're more face framing. They're not as harsh and blunt. And so I feel like if you want to go the bang route, it can be great. I think you can look way younger. Just do them a little better. And the same goes for bobs. There's good bobs and bad bobs. I think a bob haircut will kind of always be around, but the way it's implemented and the actual cut kind of changes based on the year. So for this year, here's some bad bobs. I think the very blunt, harsh bobs are out of style, especially when it's higher in the back and longer in the front. Very, very out of style. Then there's this bob where it's just very round. It just to me, it ages her. And then here's some examples where it's still a bob, but there's more layers, again, more face framing, there's still more movement. It's a great bob. But next on the screen, I am going to put the haircut that I feel like all of you collectively just want me to get. So here it is. It's kind of a bob. It's super short. I have never done anything like this. However, I'm not sure I really want to do this. It would be interesting. I know so many of you hate my hair. You know, you think I look super old and outdated, and maybe this would give me a fun, fresh look. I know my mom would absolutely love if I did this. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. It's definitely, it would be a drastic change. But let's keep going. So I know I talked about the good bobs having more layers to them, and you know, movement and dimension is great for this year specifically, but I just want to kind of caution you, like, don't get too many layers. I think overly layered hair, like some examples you're seeing here, can just make your hair look way too thin. So I think some layers are good, but too much can be really bad. And then we do have to talk about the good old money piece, because that's definitely a recent hair trend that was super in, and it's making its way out. And I'm sure you know what a money piece is, but it's where there's like the blonde highlight section around your face. And it started out years ago very bold, and then it has kind of toned down a bit. But overall, I feel like less and less people are getting a money piece. I think you can still get some sections around your face to kind of like lighten it up a little bit, but the actual money piece isn't as popular this year. Now, in this video, I share specific fashion mistakes that are pretty common, but they're definitely aging you, they're making you look older than you really are, and what to wear and style instead. So I'll see you over here.